Hi everyone, Elle Hackney here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where I like to speak to everyone in the book world, whether they be authors, illustrators, industry professionals, or content creators, podcasters. And today I have a romance author who I'm very excited to speak with, Amy Hutton. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Um, so Sit Stay Love, because that came out in August, and
Yes.
now you've got your next one in June. I'm very, very curious. How long did it take? Did you just write everything and the first one got picked up, so the next one got published so quickly? Or did you write that next one like so quickly? I'm curious about your process. Please tell me everything.
Okay, so Sit Stay Love, I wrote, I was actually working on another book at the time. And then the idea for Sit Stay Love just kind of dropped into my head, and I got like the idea out onto it was just a scene, really, the opening scene of the book, actually. And I just kind of got it out, went back to what I was writing, and then it just kept bugging at me. So I went, okay, I think I'm going to have to write this story because little pieces kept coming, and I was writing notes. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Let's just write it. So I wrote that, and then I started pitching it. So I pitched it first at the Australian Society of Authors Literary Speed Dating, and got a couple of requests for material, which was great. And then I was heading to the Romance Writers of Australia conference in Fremantle in 2022. And when I got off the plane, I got the last of the email saying, look, we love it, but it's not going to fit with us. So I was like, okay, cool. That was for the two pictures that I had done. And I was like, well, I know I can go forward from here. And I pitched it as part of the Romance Writers of Australia conference pitching opportunities to Simon Schuster. And about a week later, I got a request for material, and then it kind of rolled down from there. Around November, I think I got the offer. So we looked at Sit Stay Love first, and that was going to they wanted to turn it around really quickly. They thought it was in a good enough position that they could do that. So it was Christmas and everything, so it took ages to sign the contract because like everybody was away for Christmas. And then so I think we signed off in January, and it was out in August. But before then, we started talking about the possibility of another book in the series, or like a connected book, because that's within the universe, I want to say, rather than series. And before Sit Stay Love came out, they signed me to write that book as well. So, and that was Love from Scratch, and that's just come out in June. So they both, I mean, I hadn't written Love from Scratch, so I literally like turned that out in sort of 3 or 4 months, probably about 4 months, I guess, the first draft. And then like I had a little, a couple of months really to polish it. But I was actually launching Sit Stay Love when I was sort of finishing off Love from Scratch for delivery. So I had to deliver Love from Scratch at the end of September, and I launched Sit Stay Love in August. So it was quite a lot. There was quite a lot going on, but that's basically the timeline of it. I guess both of them probably took me 3 to 4 months to write the first draft, about 4 months probably for the first draft, and then a couple of months after that to really sort of go through them and polish them up a little bit, and redraft them and things like that. I think with Love from Scratch, obviously it was going to the publisher, so I didn't have to have it absolutely, pitch perfect ready, because I was going to have an editor. So that takes a little bit of pressure off. When you're pitching a book, you need to have it absolutely as perfect as you can have it. But when you're sending to the publisher, you want to have it as perfect as you can have it, but it doesn't have to be quite that sort of publishing level, because they're going to do an edit on it anyway.
Yeah, it actually, I love how this book came about, because it was an idea while you were working on something else. And it seemed like that niggle to get it done. And look where it's come. You've got two great books. They're doing fantastic. You're getting lots of press. It seems like it was a meant to be thing. Do you rely on your intuition a little bit with your choices?
I don't plan. So I won't say anymore that I'm a complete pantser, because in the last couple of books I've had to actually, tell my publisher what the idea is that I'm working on. So I have like an idea and basically a little blurb. So I sort of have a general idea of where I'm going. But other than that, I just kind of get in there and write. And I think that's what kind of happens with the ideas. I don't go, hi, I think I might write a book about, a pet shelter, or a book, a love story where a cat is, the main protagonist or whatever. Those ideas just kind of come to me as I go. So I think, I think intuition, you just kind of roll with it. For me, I just go, oh, that's an idea, I roll with it. And for Sit Stay Love, it was just such a persistent idea. I was working on a very, very, very different story, and it was just kept coming back. And I think when you start kind of making millions of notes in your phone when you're out walking the dogs, or down the shops, and you have to quickly you've got to really write it, because that's. And I've only just returned, like a couple of years later, I've only just returned to that story that I jumped out of, because I was like, I'm just going to go back and see if I can get that finished, because I really like it. And I just, I had to kind of put it off to the side while I did these other books.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. I like how this is all sort of unfolded for you, because it also seems very natural. It just seems like this is the path that's made for you. How long have you been writing for? Because it seems like you're very polished in how you get things done. So how long has your journey been?
I quit my full-time job in what year? I think it was 2018. Would that? Yeah, that would be right. So I was a television producer, and I continue to produce and freelance post that. And I think this is the first year that I haven't actually done any contract work, just because I haven't had time. I've been asked, but I've just been doing book stuff. So yeah, I had always written, as part of my job. I wrote scripts and that kind of thing. And that was my favorite part of the job, was the writing. And I've always loved writing. I've always blogged, and I've always kept journals, and I've always written short stories, and just for myself. And I just got it into my head that I really wanted to do more. And so I walked away from my job in 2018 and went contract, so left full-time work, to try and give myself the space to give this a go. I didn't really give myself a time frame. Everybody's like, oh, what have you given yourself 5 years? And I knew just from my research that was probably not going to be the best idea, to give myself like a short time frame, because it can take a very long time or whatever. But I just kind of dug straight into it then, and just committed myself to it. So I guess it was 4 years until when I got my sort of my offer. So I mean, which I think is not too bad. And in that time, I had some short stories published with Romance Writers of Australia, and worked on some other manuscripts. But yeah, so it's been pretty quick, I feel, to get to where I am now. And I feel like I'm only just on the very, very beginning of what I'm hoping will be a long journey. But yeah, that's kind of, I just decided that I wanted to do this. So
That's
I did it.
amazing. So if you wrote as scripts as a producer, because it's visual storytelling, very different to novel writing, how did you going from visual to novel writing?
I will say that the first piece of feedback that I got from my editor on Sit Stay Love was, Amy, this is not a screenplay. I know, I was like, okay, gotta put some point of view in there. But what I used to produce was very visual, but I do think that you coloured in your words with pictures. And I think that has actually transferred into my writing. A lot of people say that when they read my stuff, they can see it like a movie, and or they can see it being transferred into changed, created into a movie. Wouldn't that be nice? And so I still write very visually, because that has always been my job, was to write to pictures, essentially, or write words and then use the pictures to colour in those words. And I guess that in many ways, that's what you're doing when you're writing a book as well. You might be writing the dialogue, and then you're using the imagery of the surroundings and their inner thoughts to kind of colour in the world around their words. So to me, they're not that different. It's just, you know, I was writing 30-second scripts before. Now I'm writing 90,000 word books. That's different.
That's a bit different.
A little bit.
And so with your past experience as a movie producer, as script writing, can you then put Sit, Stay, Love into a screenplay, or is that a bit different because you're represented by a publisher? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so they do have worldwide rights to all aspects of the books. So if there was to be somebody interested in getting the film and TV rights to either of the books, then yeah, they would have to talk that through with Simon and Schuster, and then they would do that deal.
And it sounds like you're the perfect candidate because you've been there, you've done that. It seems like you've got so much more knowledge than another author who hasn't been down that path before. So if anyone's watching, Amy Hutton's candidate.
Oh, I would love that. I would love it.
Can I ask, this is okay, romance writing. I wanted to dive in and just be a bit unfiltered here. Do you ever listen to people's marital issues and get inspiration?
No, I don't. I can honestly say everything that happens in my books comes out of my imagination. About the only things that I can say that I have any kind of real life reference for is maybe because one of the characters in my books is a movie star, so there is some on-set stuff in the second book, Love from Scratch. He's making a movie, so there's a little bit of on-set stuff. So there's kind of a bit of my background leaking through there. And I will say that the animals, the pets that are in my books, are everything that happens around those pets is definitely comes from some experience of mine of having a dog or a cat. And so I know those kind of behaviors. But other than that, it all just comes from wherever it drops out of, like the sky into my brain. I mean, sometimes you do hear things and you think, oh, that would make a really good story, and I know I've kind of touched things into my phone, but I can't say that I've ever kind of overheard a conversation and gone, I'm going to put
perfect. And so with writers out there, because I couldn't wait to chew on your journey and know more about you and how you got to where you are, because you are doing spectacularly. Do you have advice for those starting who just would love to be in your shoes?
I think well, I mean, there's plenty of writers' shoes that I wish I was in. So as I said, I'm very, very at the beginning of my journey. I mean, it's not it's a long path for me, and there's a lot of fabulous writers that I'm like, gosh, I wish I was at that point in my career. I hope that I one day get to have a pile of books that's the height of me that I see some authors sort of doing on Instagram. But I think the real advice, I think, is just, if you want to write, you have to write, because that's actually the only way that you're going to get a book out. There's a lot of desire to write, and sometimes that doesn't translate into a finished product, because it can be overwhelming to sit down and know that, oh my gosh, I've only got 5,000 words down, and I know I probably need to get like 80,000 plus for it to be in the space of being a publishable book. If you're going traditional publishing, you can choose your duration if you're indie publishing, but traditional publishers have kind of a bit of a space that they like to work within. And the only way that you're going to get there is to write. So I think the first thing to do is to read and to learn. So immerse yourself into craft and read all the books. And I'm not just talking craft books, I'm talking, read your genre. Like if you are writing paranormal romance, read paranormal romance. So you get a sense of what's working out there, what's current, or structure, or that kind of thing. I think reading is the best way to learn about writing. And then write, just settle down and write. And also try and find a community. Like I joined Romance Writers of Australia, and that really opened up a community for me. And also just being on Instagram has opened up a community in the book world, both with authors and bookstagrammers. So, it's important to do that because it can be quite a lonely sort of thing. You're just sort of sitting there in your own world, in your own space, writing these words, and you're not, that can be quite a small world to be in sometimes, even though the world you're writing might be expansive. So I think it's important to have those connections. But really, the only way to write a book is to write the book. That's pretty much the only way to do it. So just sit down and do the work, and don't get overwhelmed, and just believe in yourself and try to enjoy it. We're not all going to have the same outcome, but if you love writing and you feel like you want to write, then just write.
That's fantastic words. Can I ask though? I know some aspiring authors do look at that traditional 80K to 90K word limit. Do you use software like Plotter to help you, or how's your process with that?
I just write. Weirdly, I seem to always come out around the same sort of. I don't know how that happens. I mean, I do kind of keep an eye on the word count, obviously, as I'm writing. I don't use Plotter or any programs. I write in Word. I don't use anything. And I do kind of look at that and go, oh my gosh, like I'm getting, it's going to be, I've got to a couple of books I've kind of gone, oh, no, I'm like at 105,000. And, I know I'm going to have to peel that back, but that's okay. You can do that in the edit. Usually when you go back on the second draft, there's some stuff that you're going to yoink straight out because you're like, oh, that's fun, but it's not actually doing anything at all. It's just sort of fun, so that can go. But I tend to write to that sort of ballpark words anyway. I'm not even sure why. So I don't use any programs. I just get in there and write. I just let the story, come out how it wants to come out. And, I'll deal with any kind of issues with it when I come back. I mean, usually my first draft's usually in a fairly good position, but you'll always come back on the second draft to kind of make sure you're hitting all your right beats and yoink that stuff out that's not making any sense or is just not needed. But save it just in case you want it later. Stash it away.
Okay, so that's good to know as well, that you don't necessarily even need fancy software. All you really do need is a Word document, and you can get it done. It's as simple as
absolutely. That.
Yeah.
I mean, and that really depends on how you work. I know people who are very big plotters and like to plan stuff out, and then they do use things like Plotter and programs that will help them keep track of the structure of the story that they want to write. But for me, that's not how I write. So I don't really need that. I just get in there and write.
And just a question about your characters, because it's not like an action superhero villain. It's not like a good guy bad guy. It's romance. So it's, how do you go with your characters where there's conflict, but you need to see one side of the story and then the other side of the story? Because in real life, some people who are in those relationships find it hard to look at both sides, but you're telling a story. So how do you do that with your characters?
With Sid Stay Love, that was actually a single person point of view. So in order to get the other characters' opinions and feelings and motivations across, you often use their body language or their dialogue, or maybe other characters who can tell you about what they're going through, or maybe there's a mirroring situation to do that. I think when it comes to my particular, or at least with these two books, it's important to me that the people are, even though they're going to make mistakes and there's going to be tension and conflict, and because that's part of human life, right? We all kind of screw up every once in a while and upset people, and they're all pretty decent people. You know, they're just trying to do their best, and under maybe difficult situations. Or one of them runs a pet shelter that's pretty chaotic and is always short of money. Or you've got the movie star who seems to feels like he has the weight of 300 people's jobs on his shoulders. So how's he dealing with that? So you have to. But for me, it's important that they're decent people. And I think with Love from Scratch, it was a dual point of view. So it's a lot easier then to get across everybody's point of view. And I tend to do that within one chapter. So I don't kind of go one character chapter, one character chapter, one character chapter. I have alternating point of views within a chapter, so that if they're both in the same situation, we can see what they're both going through in that moment. I like to write it like that. But yeah, I think it's just about trying to find a way within the structure of your story to illustrate the other person if they're not actually the point of view at the time. And that can be just through a whole lot of different tools. Like I said, it can be someone else just coming in and speaking about them, or noticing something and passing that information on. And or it can be their body language, or it can just be their words.
Did you do any writing courses to kind of perfect these ideas of perfecting your characters?
I did do writing. When I first started, it was one of the first things I did was I jumped into as many courses as I could. So I did short story courses. I did plotting and planning courses that they didn't take very well, but they were great information. I did all sorts of different courses. I did them through Writing New South Wales. I did them through the Romance Writers of Australia. I did them through the Australian Writers Centre. I did like a whole lot of different courses. And on top of that, outside of writing craft courses, I also did courses about author branding and social media and just the other aspects of the author life that I knew was going to be part of my job. And so that was really the first couple of years. While I was writing, I was doing a lot of courses, and every so often I'll still dip into a course. I'll see something, I'll go, oh, that sounds interesting, or that's a good refresher. I might jump in and just do a character refresher, because you'll always learn something. So, you're never past learning, no matter where you are. And like I said, I'm very, very at the beginning of my career. So I'm learning oh my gosh, learning so much all the time. I always feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So, always.
Now, Amy, I've absolutely adored speaking with you today. I think you've just got so much more information you could share. But are you available for author chats at libraries or even at schools if teens want to learn how to write? Are you available for those types of things?
Absolutely. I would absolutely love to do that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be great. I wish we had the opportunity, like when I was at school, we never had authors come in to talk to us about that kind of thing. And I would have really loved that. But, we were too busy studying Shakespeare and stuff.
Yeah, learning about the writers from centuries ago.
Yeah.
So anyone watching this video, because Amy is someone who's multi-talented in lots of different areas. She's done screenwriting. She has got 2 successful novels out full of information. Amy, if anyone would like to have you visit their school or their library, how do they contact you?
If you just go to my website, amyhuttonauthor.com, there's a way to contact me by email on there. So they can do that. Or they can just go to my Instagram, which is at @amyhuttonauthor, and just message me through Instagram.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today, sharing a little bit about your journey. I hope that there's more books to come from you or screenplays to come from you.
Oh, yeah. I'd love that.
And I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.